everyone to my session in DynamicsCon. Today I'm going to be talking about a crash course into Powerapps portals. So, hope you're all ready for this. It's pretty exciting. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself first. First off, my name is Nick Doleman. I currently am a senior content developer for Microsoft. Some of you may have remembered me in the past. I used to be part of the Microsoft MVP program. Since joining Microsoft, no longer part of that, but still trying to be very engaged with the community. Very excited to be here for DynamicsCon. I think this is a great conference. It's nice to see all these presentations talking about stuff that I'm passionate about, the Power Platform and Dynamics, and just great to see a lot of my friends and colleagues presenting over this week. So a lot of other great sessions out there, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy mine as well. So these are some ways you can get a hold of me if you have questions. But of course, during this, if you have questions, go into the chat window and start firing off those questions. I'm going to be online. I'm going to be answering those the best I can. Of course, there's going to be some time for some live Q&A at the end where if there's something you're not clear on, I'm more than happy to help or at least try to point you in the right direction. So, enough about me, enough about DynamicsCon. Let's begin to talk about what we came here for, and that's Powerapps portals. So what are we going to be talking about today? First off, if you don't even know what Powerapps portals is, let's talk a little bit about what that is. And then for those of you who may have a bit of an idea, or once we give that little bit of intro, we're going to do some things here. We're going to build a very simple portal app. And we're going to go through the different steps, and we're going to be provisioning that on our Power Platform environment. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools that we're going to be using as we're building our portal app that you will need to get familiar with. Do the simple things. Let's just design and style a page. We're going to talk about security. Security in Powerapps portals, that's a pretty big deal. And we want to make sure that you have a good grounding on that as you begin your own portal projects. We're going to talk about allowing our external audience that's going to be accessing these portals, how they can view their data and how we can begin to filter data. And hopefully have a bit of time at the end. I'm going to talk about how one of the newest features of Powerapps portals and how we can turn that portal into a mobile application. And of course, we're going to have some time for some questions at the end. All right, so we're going to keep rolling along here, and we're going to talk about what exactly is Powerapps portals. What are Powerapps portals? Basically, they're a website that ties back into your Power Platform. So yes, we can build Canvas apps, we can build model-driven apps, maybe we can enable Dynamics 365 applications, but a lot of times we want to interact with people outside of our organization, our external audience. They could be customers, they could be members of our organization, or it could just be fans, it could be anybody else. So we don't necessarily want to be licensing them directly or building Canvas apps and trying to find ways to distribute that. What we can do is we can build simply a website. And yes, we can do that with Powerapps portals. Now we're going to talk about good process on building portals and some of the use cases that we can do with them. So I've built some, quite a few portals in the past for various things, memberships, associations, for training, for learning, a bunch of different things. Now, things to keep in mind as we, begin to provision our portals. You're going to require a Power Platform environment. You are going to require Dataverse. You're going to need Dataverse enabled. Of course, if you're already building Canvas apps, model-driven apps, Power Automate, you probably are already using Dataverse. I would recommend before you dive into portals, get a sandbox or get a trial. Do not do this on your production if you're just playing around. It is going to install a lot of solutions. Wait until you're ready before you deploy to production. So the very first thing is what we're going to do is we're going to provision a portal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch out of PowerPoint and go directly into the tools that we're going to use. So I'm in my Power Platform environment. I have a brand new environment set up. I provisioned that environment a little bit earlier, and I have Dataverse enabled. I don't have the Dynamics 365 apps, so we don't need these to build portals. So on the screen, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on blank app. Now with that blank app, of course, I can build a Canvas app. I can build a blank app on Dataverse. We also have this option for blank website. So this is how we create our portal. I'm going to click on that portal. First thing we're going to do is we're going to give that a name. So I'm just going to, and we can call that whatever we want. It's just something that we can reference by. And then we need to give it a unique URL that's going to be .powerappsportals.com. This can be anything, but it does need to be unique. So if I just do DynCon 2022 and I'm going to hit tab, we're going to see if that is available. And it appears to be available. That's great. Now, of course, when we actually go live down the road with our production site, we don't have to have it at a .powerappsportals.com address. This can be your own custom URL, and there are steps, and that goes a little bit above and beyond what we're going to talk about today, but that is an option for you. We're going to pick the language. For now, I'm just going to pick English, but we do have the ability to enable other languages if you have those enabled in your Dataverse environment. If you've already provisioned a portal before on a trial, or maybe some other time, or if you migrated data from another portal, let's say this is a dev or a testing or even your production, you could always use the existing data from an existing website record. What that basically means is it is going to use that portal metadata that gets stored in Dataverse, and it's going to provision the portal based on that. I don't have any other data available for that, so I'm just going to leave that. And then I would hit create. And when I hit create, that's going to do, it's going to do three things. It's going to install a series of solutions on my Dataverse environment. That's going to take a while. The next thing, it's going to load a subset of portal metadata. So when we create a Canvas app or a model-driven app, we're starting from blank. When we're creating a portal, we'll actually use a starter portal template that already has a series of web pages, a sitemap, and some assets. We're going to begin to modify that. So what the portal metadata is, it's data that gets loaded that describes all that. And then finally, it's going to create an Azure app that is actually going to be the physical portal that people will interact with that will tie back to Dataverse. So I've already created a portal earlier. So normally I'd hit create here. This can take quite a while. This is something that I know the team at Microsoft, we're improving, and then the deployment is going to become a lot faster in the future. But for now, this is going to take a bit of time. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to dive in right away. And what I want to talk about briefly is some of the tools that we're going to be using. The first off, once we've created our portal, and I have one here, and I can tell that this is a portal app because I look at the type. I have a bunch of model-driven apps. I don't have a Canvas app yet, but what I'm going to do on this portal, I'm just going to click on the ellipse, and I'm going to click on Edit. And this is something called the Portal Studio, and this is where we can begin to edit and work on our portal. So this is one of the tools we're going to be using. Another tool is something called the Portal Management app. And what the Portal Management app is, it is a model-driven app. So because of that, we're used to, if you've worked with Dynamics 365 or you've built model-driven apps before, really we can tell that it's really a way that we can navigate to look at data. So what this is, it actually is all the portal metadata. So if I begin to look at things like web pages, I can click on that. I can see a series of web pages that have already been created as I provisioned the app. We have other things here like the menuing items, lists, forms, and we're going to talk about a few of these things in this demo. But realize this is one of the other tools that we'll use along with the Portal Studio as we configure our portal. Now, I know some of you are professional developers. You're not so much makers or configurators. And you're probably asking, this is great, but I'm a developer. I do hardcore code. And for the portal, definitely we can extend the portal using code. I'm not going to dive too much into that today, but I do want to point out that we can use something called the Power Platform command line interface, and there is an extension for Visual Studio Code that allows us to edit and work with portals. Now, like I said, I'm not going to dive too deeply in that today, but just know that if you're a professional developer and you want to be able to begin to configure your portal, there are options to use things like VS Code in order to edit that. But let's go on to building our own portal application. So once again, I'm in the Portal Studio, and this is where we could begin to edit our page. So I'm going to do, first thing normally people would like to do is begin to apply their own branding and styling that matches their corporate color. So I can do something here. I can begin to change my logo. I'm going to upload a logo image. Let's just open up this guy, and I can begin to change things around. I can also begin to change some of the lettering in here. So I'm going to upload a logo image here, and I can just pick one and load that into my assets. And of course, once it's in here, I can begin to do things like trying to resize this a little bit, shrink that down so it's going to fit properly into my portal. That's good. Let's increase this a little bit. Let's change this lettering here. We'll just call this SWS. That's a Sasquatch Watching Society. And we can begin to change some of our other assets on here. So as you can begin to see, we can begin to edit our portal directly using those what you see is what you get tools. What I can do is we have that blue and the white. We can change our background, our styling, our colors. So I can go into themes. I can pick an existing theme in here. Let's change this to the purple theme, which will allow us to change some of those colors. Of course, I can go in and customize that with some of the coloring and the fonts, or I can go in and change the CSS directly. Again, these are good tools for people like me who are citizen designers, not deep designers, but we can go in and begin to edit our portal to follow a particular brand. So now that I've done this, so far so good, let's actually begin to add a page to our portal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on a new page here and click on new page. Going to choose a layout. We can actually define different layouts, and you can prepare a whole set of layouts, whether they're fixed layouts or kind of like free form, depending on how you want your portal to look. I'm just going to pick the blank page for now. And what that's going to do, it's going to create a blank page on my portal. So I can begin to add some assets. First thing, let's fill out some of the properties here. I'm just going to let's just call this Sasquatch for the name, and then as soon as I tab off, it's going to auto save. What that's doing is it's saving that information back into Dataverse. Let's add the partial URL in here. So that partial URL is going to be the page when I want to navigate to that. What's also happening, it's going to add a menu item to the sitemap or to the navigation at the top. And there's different ways we can control that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to begin to add some components. So first off, I'm going to add a 2-column section. Oops, I need to make sure I'm choosing the section. Let's add this. Here we go. I have those 2 columns there. And then within that 1 column, I'm going to add some text. So I'm going to add some text here. I have some in my clipboard. And again, talk about the Sasquatch, proud and noble animal. And I'm going to go in here, I'm going to add some other content. So let's just add an image. And then here I'm going to, again, I can upload an image that I might have on my desktop. Or we could also have a catalog of images that we might have preloaded. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to resize this a little bit. And this is sort of pretty standard for any kind of web development tool, is the ability to create, web pages and layouts and add text and images and whatnot. So I'm going to do that. Let's just maybe make this a little bit bold and a little bit bigger. There we go. Cool. So we've created our page, and now what I can do is I can just go and browse website. And what this is going to do is going to give me a preview of what my portal looks like. So far so good. I'm just going to increase the resolution a little bit. It looks okay. It looks like I have some things I might need to fix up here on my heading, but overall, this is a Powerapps portal. I've provisioned it. We've created a web page. We've added some text. We've added an image. And you're probably thinking, you know what, that looks great, but I could do that in WordPress. I could do that in Notepad with some HTML. There's a lot of other tools that would allow you to create portals. So where's the real power into this? So if you're building a web application, probably what you'd want to do at some point is also to interact with data. And how would we do that? Well, Portals ties back to Dataverse. Now, anybody who's worked in the Power Platform knows what Dataverse is. It is a data service, very much a powerful database. It has the ability to, hold data, apply security, automation, integrations, and a whole bunch of different things. So as part of Dataverse, in order to begin to build some components for Powerapps portals, what I want to do is actually go into some of our traditional Powerapps tools and create some different Dataverse assets that we're going to use in building out our portal app. So once again, I'm in my Powerapps, my maker portal, with the same place I would go to build Canvas apps and model-driven apps. I'm going to go in solutions. And of course, if we're building new Powerapps, we're going to be doing things in solutions. I've created a solution here. I just called it Sasquatch for now. And what I'm going to be doing is here is where I could create tables and other assets. So I have this table that I've created already. It's called Sighting, because what I want our users to do is log into our portal and log all their Sasquatch sightings. If they see Bigfoot out there, I want them to go to our portal and begin to log that. So maybe we can take that data and begin to trace where Bigfoot is hiding out. I've gone in, I've added the table. And if I take a look at that table, there's a few things here that we've added. Of course, we've added columns to our particular table. I've added a relationship to the contact table because eventually we're going to want to track who's actually logging some of these sightings. And the other asset I've created is a view. We've modified our view. So if I go into something like active sightings, I've added the particular column, the subject, the details, the contact email, the date and time, and we're going to use this view in our portal later. But if you've built model-driven apps, you're probably very familiar with this interface. And then of course, the other thing that we've built is a form. That form is going to serve for a few different things. If I go into forms here, and I've created what I call the citing form. It's a main form. And I'm going to go into the form editor. And this is the same editor that you would use when you're building your model-driven apps. I've gone in and I've created the section, and I'm going to increase the size a little bit here so it's a little bit easier to see. I've added the subject, the contact email, the date and the time of the sighting, and the details. So again, same steps that you would follow when you're building a model-driven app. So I've created these assets. So now let's utilize them in our Powerapps portal. So once again, I'm in my portal studio. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go back up to the home page, and I'm going to create a page for people to log in and log their sightings of the Sasquatch. So let's create a new blank page. Same process as before. We're going to give it a name. I'm going to call this log sightings. And I'm just going to use the partial URL again. And again, this is going to be part of the URL to access this page from a public website. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a form component. So once again, I'm going to go into my components, and before we added some sections with text and images. So this time I'm going to choose a form. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new form. I'm just going to call that add a sighting. And then I'm going to choose the table. Now this is where we choose our Dataverse table. So let's just take a look, and I'm going to put sighting, and that is one I created earlier. And I'm going to choose that Dataverse form layout, which is that sighting main form. So those are assets that I created using the regular model-driven app tools. If I wanted to, I could take that a step further and edit that form if I wanted to, but here I'm going to choose mode insert. So we have that here. We have the form as part of our page. Now let's actually see what happens when we go and browse our website. So you'll notice the very first thing you see here is you don't have appropriate permissions. This is an important concept. Powerapps portals, we are going to be exposing data from your Dataverse to a public page. Now, if you think about it, this might make a few people very nervous, especially if you have very sensitive data. Out of the box, Powerapps portals has security built in. So therefore, we can actually allow and disallow how we can view and set up data. So what we need to do in order for us to be able to enter data, we need to set up something called a table permission. So I'm going to go back into my Designer Studio here, and I'm going to click on that form, and we see here that we have something called Permit by Permissions. So I'm going to click on the Manage Table Permissions, and we have one for feedback already. I'm going to create a brand new permission, and I'm going to call this Add Citing, and I can call this whatever I'd like. Again, I'm going to choose my Dataverse table. Here's citing, and we're going to select the access type. Now we have different access types. For now, I'm just going to choose global access, and I'm going to add the create privileges, meaning we want to be able to allow users to create records. We may not want them to read or write or delete or do other actions. Now, at this point, we're going to have our table permission set up. We also have to tie this into a web role. Out of the box, Powerapps Portals comes with 3 different web roles, one for anonymous users, one for authenticated users. For now, I'm going to choose both anonymous users and authenticated users, meaning users that log into the portal, and anonymous users that don't log into the portal. The administrator has some extra privileges. Really not going to get into that right now, but we're just going to leave those 2 roles. I'm going to hit save. And again, when I save this information is being saved back into the portal metadata. Now that we've added this table permission, I'm going to go back to that page where we want to log our sightings. And again, I'm going to pick on the form here. So now we have those table permissions set up. So we have our permissions, and I'm going to just go into advanced settings here. We have the ability to turn on CAPTCHA as well. I'm going to shut those off just so we don't have them appearing on our form. And so we have all this. This is now saved. Let's go to Browse Website. And I still have my screen there from before, but this is refreshing. And look, now we have our form is now set up. So I can say, saw Bigfoot while camping. I can put in a contact email. Let's put test at test.com for now. And when did we see? This is very important if you're trying to find Bigfoot. Say we saw him today at 3:39. Put in some details. I can say I saw Bigfoot while I was camping. I'm just going to scroll down at the bottom, and I'm just going to submit that. And what that submit has done, it's now added that record to that Dataverse table. It's also allowed me to do that because as an anonymous user, I'm not signed in yet, I was able to, with the anonymous user web role, I had permissions to create that record in Dataverse. What we've done is we've added a page, we've added text, we've added an image, we've added a page with a form, and now we're able to add that information into Dataverse. This is all well and good, but what if we actually want to view information that's already in Dataverse? And also the other thing is, this was an anonymous user. What if I want to log in? I want to control who has the ability to actually log sightings, because you can't just trust any crazy person off the street to log a Bigfoot sighting. You need people that are rational, logical, scientifical. So let's make sure that we are going to allow only the right people to access our site. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go into that portal management app. So if we remember, the portal management app is that model-driven app. And what I do want to point out that the users that log into the portal are contacts in Dataverse. So if you've used Dynamics 365 before, you're probably very familiar with contacts, or if you built model-driven apps, these are really just representing people. So here I'm going to choose one of the contacts that are already in my Dataverse, Jim Glynn here. Let's drill down in here. And he has a contact record. He has information about him, his company, his email address, all that fun stuff. What I want to do is, begin to create an invitation for him to join our portal. So I'm going to create the create invitation. And what this is going to do, it's going to create a code for Jim to be able to log into the portal. So I'm just going to click save. it's created this invitation record. Now, what I would normally do is I would begin to set up a Power Automate or use workflow and send Jim an email with that code embedded. But I don't really have time right now to set up the exchange and walk you through that process. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab that invitation code that got generated. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our portal. And I'm going to go into the sign in. Now, if I'm configuring a particular Powerapps portal, what I would probably do is I would begin to set up the authentication. The authentication is a much broader discussion. What we would normally do in a production sense is we would use something like Azure B2C or some of the other authentication providers. However, today I'm just going to use the out-of-the-box forms-based authentication, which is great for demos and for learning. But again, for production, you want to make sure you're setting up proper authentication. So for now, I'm just going to go and redeem invitation. I'm going to put in the invitation code that we just copied. I'm going to click register. And we see Jim's email comes up here. I'm just going to choose Jim. Let's set up a password, something extremely secure. Password 123. No one would ever guess that. And I'm going to register this user. So there are settings in order to enforce strong passwords. I've done this. What I'm going to do is it's going to automatically take me to a profile page. So now when Jim logs in, he's able to update his own information. So if his phone number changes or his email address changes or some of his other information, and we can configure this form again in the Dataverse to have the different fields we want. What we can do is update this information and Jim can do it himself. Anyways, he's all now signed in and we see here that Jim is signed in to the portal here. So now that Jim signed in, we can actually begin to use that with some custom web roles. Now what I want to do is back into that log sightings is to be able to automatically associate Jim or any of our logged in users to creating these records. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go once again back into the portal management app. And remember we created that form earlier, and that form is going to appear in our portal metadata. So I'm going to go into basic forms, and here's that add citing form. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to add something called, and this is where sort of the back end way we can do things. And again, Microsoft is more and more adding more of these features to the studio, but not quite everything yet. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go into basic form metadata. I'm going to add some new metadata here because what I want to do is pre-fill in some of the information into our Dataverse. So I'm going to pick attribute, and I want the contact, which is a lookup field in my Dataverse. I want that to be pre-populated or actually populated when I save information. So I'm going to say set value on save. It is going to relate to the current portal user, meaning the user that's currently logged in. And I'm going to pick the attribute basically from the contact. So it's going to be the contact ID. So we've added that metadata now. And this is a little bit more of an advanced topic, but it's important to understand that we can do deeper configuration in the portal management app. I'm now going to go into, now that we've set that up, what I can do is go back into my portal form here. And Jim is now logged in. I'm going to go into my log sightings again. And Jim said, saw Bigfoot from the highway. And Jim can put in his email address. Again, the time of the sighting, Jim said he saw it last week. So we'll put in that date and then we pick the time. And, Bigfoot was seen just off the road. And I'm going to just add that data. And again, this is now going to log that to Dataverse, same as before, but this time it's going to be associated to Jim's account. So let's take it to the next step. Let's say we want to view all of the sightings that we see. So I'm going to go once again into the portal management app, into the portal studio rather. And I'm going to go into the home page here. Let's add a new page. Again, just a quick blank page. And I'm going to go in to the section. And this time I'm going to add a list. And the list is going to be called Sightings. Again, I'm going to pick that table name. I'm going to choose my view, active sightings. And again, that is the Dataverse attribute or view that I created, the same one as we created when we're creating a model-driven app. I'm going to leave these set for now. And again, we also have these table permissions. So at this point, I'm going to remember our table permissions only allowed us to create. So we also want it to be able to view the data. So I'm going to go back into table permissions here. In my add sightings table permission, I'm also going to give read access. So our users are now able to see that. I'm going to hit save. And the other thing I'm going to do as well in that sighting table permission is I'm going to remove the anonymous user role. So we only have authenticated users. Jim is already part of the authenticated users by virtue of logging in, so he should be good there. We have that set up. I'm going to go back to my page here. So we have nothing yet to display. We have our permissions now set up. So let's browse to see what we see. So now we're actually seeing a list of all of those sightings on our web page. So we have that list here. This is the one I put in anonymously earlier. This is the one Jim put in. Now, because Jim is logged into the portal and he is an authenticated user, this is why he sees this information. If Jim were to sign out, we would actually see we don't have permission to view these records. We get that because we removed that anonymous access. So I'm going to go once again back in. I'm going to sign in with Jim. So again, now if I go to the log sightings, the page where I see the list, once again, we see that list of data. Now, if we want to filter it, this is where we can begin to use table permissions to our advantage. Perhaps we only want our users to see the sightings that they've logged. We don't want to share other people's logged information. Now, this is important when you think about it. If you're on a portal, you're viewing things like invoices or medical information. Obviously, you don't want the whole world to be able to see your information, but you want to be able to see it. So what we would do here is go back into our studio and let's actually go into our permissions, our table permissions. And I'm going to go into the add sighting permission again. And this time I'm going to change the access type. So as opposed to having a global access, what I want to do is change that to contact access, meaning I only want to view the data that's related to who the contact that I'm logged in as. So I've chosen contact access. This now requires me to pick a relationship. So it's going to pick the schema name of that relationship of contact to the sightings table. Let's just hit save now. So we've updated that. If I now go back into the new page where we have that list, I'm now going to go to browse website. And we see here that our list has changed. It used to be 2 records. Now it's 1 record because it's only showing the information that's visible to Jim. So what we've done is we've created a page with some content. We've added the form to add information. We've now authenticated a user to be able to log into the portal. And we've begun to see how we can begin to use table permissions to filter the data that that particular user sees. So we can do quite a bit more with the within the portal management app. I can also take this a step further and I can begin to create custom web roles. So we can go beyond the authenticated users and the anonymous users. I could create my own custom web role, tie that web role to specific table permissions, and also things like page permissions if I wanted to hide complete pages or sections of my portals. So again, I just want to reiterate that we can use security to really tie down and lock down our portal. So we have other features. We can do things like enable progressive web apps. We can add SharePoint. We can tie in Power BI. There's a lot of different things we can do with Powerapps portals. Just going to finish off to the last slide. So just to quickly wrap things up, we have the ability to create custom web templates using a language called Liquid, HTML, CSS. We have the portal's web API, which is a pro dev features to extend it. We can do things like display SharePoint, Power BI, Power Virtual Agents. We can add calendar and map views. We can launch workflows. And we can do this in extending our existing Power Platform and Dynamics 365 projects. So I'm open now for questions. If you've had questions in the chat window, we're definitely going to address those and any other questions you have about Powerapps portals. Thank you again, and thanks to DynamicsCon and all the sponsors for this session today. Hey everybody, so I hope you enjoyed that session. So if you have any more questions about that, I think I've been pretty good at keeping on top of the questions that came up in the chat window. I'll just quickly do a quick little review. Oh, well, there's a bunch here, cool. Siva, can you set it to see records for the logged in user account and contact at the same time? Yes, Steve, you can do that using the account type, or sort of the relationship with accounts in table permissions. It is definitely doable. I've done it before. What if you have a secondary source of data that you want to expose in the portal? Can you use virtual entities to expose them? Yeah, absolutely. I haven't done it myself. I know initially using virtual tables was a bit problematic with portals with the caching. However, they have resolved that. So yes, you can use virtual tables, at least for reading data. I don't think we have the two-way yet. So if you're updating data, one of the out-of-the-box portals for, I believe, Dynamics 365 sales that integrates with finance and operations or supply chain management, whatever Microsoft, my colleagues over on that side are calling it this week. They're using virtual entities, or actually, no, they're using dual write. I apologize. They're using dual write, but yes, virtual entities are possible. Cool. Great session. How do we license portals, please? Send all your money to Microsoft and you'll be licensed just fine. Actually, no, that's not fair. Licensing, there is a whole article on Docs on how licensing is done. I don't want to get into licensing because that could be a whole presentation in itself. Effectively, it's down to logged in either page views or portal logins. You basically license on a certain amount of logins per user on a 24-hour period. Think of it like the ticket to Disneyland. You have 200 tickets to sell. Someone shows up, you give them a ticket, they have access for 24 hours to go into the portal, log in and out. That's just kind of like Disneyland, going back to the car to eat your lunch and come back in again. And then if they come back the next day, they're going to need a new portal login. So you need to kind of do some scaling and managing of how the licensing is. I know licensing is a bit of a contentious topic because once you start doing the math, you can see that to license portals could be an expensive proposition. But again, as soon as you get more logins, the price begins to drop. But again, provide your feedback to Microsoft on that. I think there's definitely ways to do that. So like licensing is done. You don't license per user, you license on a per login basis, unless it's internal users. If you want to build a portal application, let's say for your like an HR application, then those users will require at minimum a Powerapps per app license. But it's better to get a Powerapps per user license because then they can have unlimited access to Powerapps. That was an excellent introduction. Is there an advanced course available from any vendor? Just to toot my own horn a little bit, I've done a course for 365.training. I know they're not a sponsor, so probably shouldn't be saying that too much, but I do have a course on there, which we're hoping to update in the next upcoming months. So I know I'm whizzing through some of these questions very quickly. Regarding the access to the records, is it possible to filter the records by other fields? Let's say a vendor column associated with one email. Yeah, you could probably do that. So if you're a vendor logging in, I know like the partner portal has this. There's a way to set up the table permissions. Now, of course, these are all based on views, which you can set up filters for already. And once we kind of get into more advanced stuff with Liquid, then you can filter on a lot more things. So it is definitely possible. On the email side, I probably would end up creating a custom template, doing some liquid to do that as opposed to a list component, but it definitely could be done. What are some of the options to protect the web page from DDoS attack for anonymous web role access? There actually, some of that's got built in because the portal itself is hosted on Azure. So there are some security measures there, especially for DDoS attacks and things like that, because it is hitting an Azure site. I know that there's some more configuration. I'm not completely versed on that yet, but there are some options there. So definitely check out the docs on that around on Azure. I don't have the link available on that, but I know that there's some extra protection there. Are you able to create test portals without publishing, without admin permissions? Create test portals without publishing, without admin permissions. Emmy, let me just think about that one for a minute. I will revert back to that. Casey asks, can you embed a portal in an existing website? You use this as a customer preference center. You can embed it in an iframe. Although I find iframes a little clunky to work with at times, especially with mobility, mobile devices and things like that. So what I've always typically done is where I have customers that have their public portal, whether it's written in WordPress or some other front end content management system, and then we always try to match the branding and styling on the portals. So if they kind of click on another link, it would go to portal dot whatever. And if they go back to their public website, it'd be, www whatever. That's usually kind of a better way to go about it. Yes, you could build your entire website on portals, but portals, as much as I love working with it, in terms of content management, it's sometimes a little clunky, I would say. But so that was the short answer. Yes, you can. I'm not sure if you really want to, but again, results may vary and it depends on what your situation is. There's a question, is there a dashboard in a day for Powerapps? I'm assuming you're asking if it's like a Powerapps portals in a day. There's not one yet. I think I have the courses I've created have been paid courses. But that being said, though, it's definitely something that I've been kind of pushing and asking for as well. And I think as you're going to see in the next few months, there's going to be a lot more good getting started information that you're going to see within Microsoft. There's also a learning path on Microsoft Learn. That content is a little bit dated, but it is still pretty good to go through to get ramped up on portals. But stay tuned. This spring, this summer, you're going to see a lot of new content coming in terms of getting ramped up on Powerapps portals. So I want to go back to Emmy's question. Are you able to create a test portals without publishing, without admin permissions? Emmy, do you mind if you can actually kind of rephrase your question a little bit? I think I understand it. You can create a portal on a sandbox system. However, any portal you create does get pushed to the public. But what you can do is, if you want to limit who sees that portal, or you don't want it to be public yet, you can set up the IP address restrictions, meaning you can set up a range of IP addresses that only people be able to see that portal. There's different ways to do that. Okay, yeah. So thanks Steve for pointing that out about the iframes. Do you actually recommend to use the Power Portal to develop portal website using Visual Studio Code? I've started with it. I would actually say, yeah, I would use that along with all the other tools. So the nice thing about love working with VS Code, you do have some syntax checking there and everything like that. But definitely it is a great tool. They've done a lot of development over the last few months. When it first came out, it was a little clunky, but now it's actually a lot better. So if you're very comfortable using code like Liquid, HTML, CSS, definitely VS Code is the best place to work on those particular templates. If you're just creating a few pages or whatever, still good to work with the Studio. Before VS Code, I was using the XRM Toolbox. There is a portal code editor as part of the XRM Toolbox, What I like about it is you can, push things back and forth, although it doesn't have the same syntax and editing. However, I do know that some of the community has created some additional extensions for VS Code for portals that takes what Microsoft has provided and takes that a little bit of a step further as well. Cool. I think I've got caught up. I'm hoping with Emmy, I hope I've answered the question the best I can about the admin side of creating those portals. And yeah, if there's anything I've not answered, I've been told I have about 4 minutes left for Q&A. So definitely, if there's more questions, let me know. I'm keeping an eye on that. And again, enjoy the other content of DynamicsCon. What's cool about DynamicsCon is all this content is free. I didn't have to pay for getting in the door, so maybe I just snuck in, but this is there's great stuff happening here, and a lot of the other speakers, new speakers as well. It's great to see new people contributing to the community, and seeing some established faces. And I see like Steve and Heidi here, Molly. Great to see Molly pop in as well. And yeah, I'm hoping to be in the event this fall as well. Lots going on. Be great to go down to Texas for that. So if anybody who doesn't know, DynamicsCon is going to be in, I believe, is it San Antonio or Austin? But it's going to be in Texas anyway. My father-in-law is down there right now, so maybe it's a good excuse. I'm not sure if he'll be back by then, but good excuse to visit. Cool. And yeah, just keeping an eye. Again, you have any other questions? So for those of you who don't, I did give an intro earlier. I used to be an MVP. I'm now actually working for Microsoft in the creating the docs. So I did paste a couple links to the docs in. So those are topics that I've been working on, trying to make better. I know there's some topics that are a little bit dated, so we're working on refreshing those, trying to fill out some of the information that's missing. Some of the docs that I've been missing as a developer of portals, I've been trying to get added in here as well. So definitely, and you with Microsoft Docs, if you find something that isn't right or something that's confusing, you can add comments to the bottom. So add comments to that saying, hey, this section doesn't make sense. I get an email. I work with our PMs and we make sure that we clarify whatever that is. So as a community, that's something that you can do is if you need some help with something and it's not clear in docs, let us know and we'll try our best to fix it and clear it up. Oh, about Power BI or Powerapps Portal or Power BI. Oh, that's a great question. So I have about less than a minute left. So that's a whole other big thing. I would say get your Power BI reports going first, and then you can embed them because there is a component to embed them. But definitely there's some good information out there. I think Nick Hayduk has some good videos up on that and a few others. Oh yeah, San Antonio. Oh yeah, we're all talking about, accessibility. Great question, Roger. Yes, I actually pushed some more information on accessibility today in Docs. So that should be published in about, I think, a couple hours anyway. It's not fully exhausted yet, but for sure, that is something we keep circling back and improving on because I know that's, we've not had a lot of information on accessibility, but that is definitely important to Microsoft and we continue to want to go down that journey. So if there's something missing, again, add a comment to that particular topic. All right. I'm getting the hook to wrap it up. Thank you for joining my session today. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever. And it should be on the deck that should be downloadable and be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you for joining my session. Thank you for joining DynamicsCon.